History isn't written, it's hidden. When brilliant grad student Kate Voss discovers her missing professor's journal filled with forbidden symbols, cryptic warnings, and references to a secret society known only as the 13, she's thrust into a chilling world where forgotten truths are guarded like weapons and remembered at a cost. Beneath her university lies more than old stone and shadow. There's a door, a whisper, a veil, and once she steps through, nothing, not time, not memory, not even reality, will ever be the same. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The storm rolled in just after dusk. Rain clattered against the Gothic arches of Blackridge University like impatient fingers tapping on glass. Kate Voss pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she crossed the quad, boots squelching through shallow puddles, her breath a ghost in the cold. The lights in the Department of History were still on. Odd. Dr. Austin Hart never stayed this late, especially not without telling her. She climbed the stone steps two at a time, shaking water from her hair as she entered the old building. The familiar scent of aged wood, dry paper, and something faintly herbal, always lingering around Dr. Hart's office, met her like an old memory. His door stood ajar. "Dr. Hart," she called softly, peering in. The office was empty. Not just empty, unsettlingly so. His chair was turned slightly, as if he'd just stepped out mid-thought. A cup of tea sat cold and half-drunk beside an open book, Codex Obscura, Volume 2. The overhead lamp buzzed, casting long shadows across the cluttered room. Maps, scrolls, obscure relics from half-documented cultures. Kate frowned. He never left things like this. He was meticulous to a fault, his life archived down to the last paperclip. A rustling sound drew her attention to the corner bookshelf. Something had been pulled out in a rush, several thick tomes tilted askew, one fallen to the floor. She stooped to pick it up and noticed an envelope tucked between the pages. Her name was written on the front in Dr. Hart's familiar hand, though the ink looked smeared, like it had been written hastily. She opened it. Inside was a single line. "They're watching. The veil must not fall. H." Her heartbeat quickened. The veil? Was this another one of his esoteric references? Some secret society he used to mumble about after too many glasses of port? She had always dismissed those late-night rambles as harmless eccentricity. But the fear etched into the handwriting told a different story. Behind the desk, something caught her eye, a slim, leather-bound journal hidden beneath a stack of manuscripts. Its cover was etched with a sigil she didn't recognize, a ring of 13 stars surrounding a closed eye. She flipped it open. Page after page, it was filled with frantic notes, translated glyphs, and half-mad scrawlings about the 13. At the top of one page, underlined twice in red, "History is not recorded. It is controlled." Kate stood in the dim light, the journal in one hand, the letter in the other, and the sound of the rain growing louder outside. A deep, uneasy silence pressed in around her. Dr. Austin Hart hadn't just disappeared. He had vanished into something he wasn't supposed to see. And now, so had she. The next morning, the storm had passed, but Kate's mind churned with thunder. She hadn't slept. Instead, she'd pored over the journal until dawn, her eyes dry and aching. Page after page hinted at something ancient, buried beneath centuries of rewritten history. Names scratched out, dates that didn't align. Mentions of a place only ever called the room where whispers linger. By noon, she was standing in the oldest wing of the Blackridge Library, a narrow, vaulted corridor known to few students and fewer faculty. The kind of place no one bothered with anymore. The scent of dust and time wrapped around her like a shawl. She ran her fingers along the bookshelves. Nothing here had moved in decades. Old plaques marked sections in Latin. The air was cold, despite the summer sun outside. She could almost hear her own breath echoing back at her. She checked the journal again. Hart had drawn a small map of this wing, meticulously detailed, marking a section of shelving with an X. He had written beside it, "Behind the veil of forgotten words, a door breathes." Kate frowned. A metaphor? Or something more? She stepped between the shelves, counting rows, until she found the exact one. Everything looked ordinary, rows of thick volumes no one had read in years. Then she noticed a gap between two bookcases, sealed with what looked like an old wooden panel. Except, it wasn't flush with the wall. She pressed it. A quiet click echoed through the silence, followed by a low grinding as a section of the wall pushed inward. Dust spilled like a sigh as a hidden door opened into blackness. Kate hesitated, then pulled out her phone for light and stepped inside. The space was small, stone walls, no windows, a vaulted ceiling stained with mold. But at its center was something remarkable. A circular table made of dark wood, cracked but still solid, surrounded by 13 high-backed chairs. And on every surface, walls, chairs, ceiling, were carvings, symbols, glyphs, and words in languages she didn't recognize. But the whispers, they were the worst. She thought at first it was the old building groaning, but then the sounds became clearer. Faint voices, not speaking, exactly chanting, layered and rhythmic, like a lullaby hummed underwater. The journal trembled in her hand. She walked to the far wall, where a large, scorched tapestry hung. By instinct, she tugged it down, and there, scrawled across the stone in a language she somehow understood, was a single sentence glowing faintly in the light. "Speak not of us, unless you seek truth over safety." Kate took a step back, her heart thudding in her chest. This wasn't just hidden. It was protected. This room, this forgotten chamber beneath the university, was real. And Dr. Hart had found it. But he hadn't left. Something had taken him. And now, she was deeper than she had ever meant to go. The whispering room hadn't stopped haunting her. Even after she locked it back behind the panel and returned to her apartment, the voices clung to her ears like fog. They whispered when the world was silent, when the kettle boiled, when the rain started again, when the fridge clicked off. They weren't loud, just present, a constant pressure in the corners of her mind, like a radio buried in the walls. Kate didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. Not until she called Marcus Devereux. He picked up on the third ring, his voice scratchy and surprised. "Kate? It's been 2 years?" She didn't waste time. "I need to talk. It's about Austin." Silence. Then, where? They met at a rundown cafe on the edge of campus. Marcus hadn't changed much. Same too long hair pulled into a loose knot, same worn coat with notebook pages spilling from the pockets. He looked like a man in a permanent state of fleeing something. He slid into the booth opposite her, eyes sharp despite the sleep deprivation etched into his face. "You said Hart." Kate nodded, sliding the journal across the table. "He's gone. Vanished. And he left me this." Marcus opened it, his brow furrowing. Jesus. He was still chasing this. "This?" Kate asked. He didn't look up. "The 13. He was obsessed. Thought they controlled everything. History. Governments. Thought knowledge was being shaped, filtered. Erased." She leaned in. "I found the whispering room." Now he looked up. Stared. "You opened it?" "I didn't mean to." "No one's opened that room in 50 years, Marcus said, voice low. "Last person who tried disappeared. Hart told me the original 13 chairs were carved by monks in the 12th century. He said the society has existed since Alexandria burned. Maybe longer." He tapped a page in the journal, one filled with overlapping symbols and ink-scrawled maps. "You know what he was looking for, right?" Kate shook her head. "The 13th sigil," Marcus said. 12 are documented on artifacts, temples, bones. But the 13th? It's supposed to be the key. Not to understanding the society, but to seeing them. She blinked. "Seeing who?" Marcus lowered his voice. "The ones behind it." Kate felt the cold thread of realization wind around her spine. "You believe this?" Marcus gave her a look, half regret, half fear. "No. I know this." He pulled a worn envelope from his coat and slid it across the table. Inside were photos. Ancient carvings, strange angular markings scorched into stone, one of them clearly matching the symbol on the journal's cover. The ring of 13 stars. "Every time this symbol appeared in history," Marcus said, "something disappeared shortly after. Libraries, leaders, cities, and always, one eyewitness swearing they saw people vanish into nothing." Kate exhaled, pulse racing. Then Hart found it. Or was close. Marcus nodded. And if he was, he might still be alive. Or worse, he might not be alone. They sat in silence as the rain began again, tapping gently on the windows like fingers trying to get in. Outside, across the street, a man stood under a street lamp, staring at them. His face was pale, unreadable. He didn't blink. When Kate turned to point him out, he was gone. The archive didn't exist on any official record. Buried beneath the Marlowe collection, a forgotten annex of the university's museum, locked for years due to structural instability. It had no electricity, no digital footprint, and no legal visitors since 1981. According to Marcus, it was where the university buried things they didn't want destroyed, but also didn't want seen. Kate didn't ask how he got the key. She suspected he didn't know either. They crept down the cracked staircase, flashlights in hand, the air growing colder with every step. The walls were lined with crates and glass cases covered in canvas tarps. Bones. Manuscripts. Artifacts from cultures that had no business being stored together. An Egyptian funerary mask sat beside an Inuit shaman's drum. A bronze idol from Mesopotamia stared down at them with obsidian eyes. At the far end of the chamber stood a steel case, locked, but only loosely. Marcus popped it open with a screwdriver, and inside, wrapped in aged velvet, was a single volume. The Ciphered Gospel. Its cover was human leather. Kate was almost sure of it, and its spine cracked like dry bark as Marcus opened the pages. Faded ink, bizarre pictographs, strange looping script that shifted beneath her gaze. Kate's breath hitched. This writing, it's alive. Marcus nodded, jaw tight. It's called Sulare. It predates Sumerian, and maybe even language itself. Hart said it's a reactive script. It changes depending on who's reading it. Kate ran her fingers gently over the page, and words began to form. Not in ink, but in her own mind. She saw glimpses, robed figures around a monolith, a man with no eyes whispering into flame, the veil, an actual curtain between reality and something waiting just beyond it. Then she saw the sigils. 12 at first, she recognized them from Hart's journal. Symbols from ancient coins, tomb carvings, erased frescoes. But at the bottom of the page was a 13th, incomplete, as if the page had been torn or censored. It was barely sketched, a spiral within a star, surrounded by jagged lines like fractured glass. And beneath it, written in shaking script, the one who sees all has already been seen. Marcus inhaled sharply. That's it. The sigil. The missing one. Kate felt dizzy. The whispers from the chamber had returned, threading through her skull like smoke. She turned to Marcus. What if Hart found this page? What if he spoke that name, that symbol aloud? Marcus shook his head. Then he saw something he shouldn't have. Something shifted in the darkness behind them. A soft scraping. Not close. Not far. Like someone dragging something heavy across a stone floor. They turned. Nothing. But when Kate turned back to the book, a fresh line had appeared, new, wet ink bleeding across the bottom of the page. It read, "Welcome, Kate Voss." She froze. The page began to smoke. She slammed the book shut just as it caught fire in her hands, not with heat, but with light. Blinding, silent light that burst from the seams and vanished in an instant, leaving the gospel intact, but the words gone. Erased. As if they had never existed. Marcus whispered, "They know you're reading." Kate stared down at her reflection in the cracked glass of the case. Behind her, a 13th shadow. Kate no longer trusted reflections. The shadow she'd seen behind her in the archive, the 13th figure, never showed up in Marcus's camera. Not in the photos. Not in the security footage they smuggled out through a university IT contact. But she felt it. Still. At the edge of every mirror, every dark window. Waiting. Watching. Unblinking. And now, she wasn't the only one feeling it. Marcus hadn't spoken much in the last 48 hours. He muttered in his sleep, speaking in that looping, ancient script. He scratched symbols into napkins, the corners of receipts, his own arms. She tried taking the pen away. He found another. And another. He wouldn't admit it, but the ciphered gospel had done something to him. And maybe to her too. One evening, while reviewing Hart's journal again, obsessing over a page she'd somehow missed the first 10 times, Kate noticed something new. A post-it note, tucked between 2 pages. Not in Hart's handwriting. Just a single sentence. They don't just erase history. They erase the ones who remember it. The edges were still damp, as if it had just been written. She stood up, heart pounding, and checked her apartment door. Locked. She pulled back the curtain. The street was empty, except for the same man she'd seen by the cafe days ago. Pale skin, black coat, hands folded in front of him like a mourner at a funeral. This time he was closer, and this time he smiled. Kate jerked the curtain shut, backed away, and called Marcus. He didn't pick up. She tried again. Voicemail. Then a text buzzed through. They got in. Don't come here. Not safe. Find the sigil. Burn it. She stared at the message. Her fingers trembled. Burn it. She grabbed the journal, flipping to the page with the incomplete 13th sigil. She could feel it now. A weight behind the lines. Like the page was holding something down. She grabbed a lighter. But when the flame touched the edge of the paper, it sputtered and went out. The shadows in the room deepened. Whispers returned. But louder now. Not just unintelligible, accusatory. Mocking. One of them even said her name. Kate. She spun around. No one. Then the bathroom door creaked open behind her. Slow. Deliberate. Inside, nothing but a mirror. Her own reflection stood there. Until it blinked, and she didn't. She stumbled back, heart slamming in her chest. The mirror shattered. Just like that. No sound. Just fractures webbing across its surface in the shape of the 13th sigil. Her phone buzzed again. New text. This time, no number. Just a message. You've looked too deeply. They are awake now. Somewhere, deep below the city, a circle of masked figures gathered around a stone table. One of them, a tall figure in a mask shaped like a serpent's head, spoke. She's ready. Another, wearing a featureless white mask, replied. Then the trial begins. The invitation wasn't sent in the usual sense. It arrived inside a dream. Kate stood at the mouth of a tunnel. Wet stone underfoot. Torches flickering in sconces carved with sigils she could now read fluently, as though they'd been burned into her mind. A whisper echoed around her, not from outside, but from within. Beneath the foundation of lies, the truth breathes. She woke with the image still clear. A rusted service tunnel behind the east wall of the university observatory. She shouldn't have known it existed. Yet by sunrise, she was standing there, staring at a concrete slab stamped university maintenance. Restricted, her breath fogging in the cold morning air. She pressed her palm to it. It moved. The door groaned inward, revealing a stairwell descending into dark earth. She descended with only her phone light and a stolen keycard Marcus had swiped from a distracted groundskeeper weeks earlier. The air was wet and thick, like breathing through gauze. The further she went, the quieter the world became. No echoes. No ambient hum. Even her footsteps felt muffled. Then she saw them. Symbols etched into the walls in blackened ash. Each identical to the sigils from the ciphered gospel. 12 in total, spaced evenly, leading deeper into the dark. And then, alone at the end of the tunnel, carved into a massive iron door. The 13th sigil, complete and glowing faintly with a sickly violet light. She touched it. The door hissed open. Inside was a vast chamber, stone and candlelit, shaped like an inverted dome. At its center stood a circular table of obsidian, its surface rippling like water. 13 chairs surrounded it, each occupied by a figure in a mask. Owl, jackal, serpent, lion, goat, raven, more. No two were alike, yet all of them watched her with the same motionless stillness. One figure stood slowly, the one in the serpent mask. Kate's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the voice before she could believe it. You were never meant to find this. It was Dean Marlowe, head of the university, esteemed historian, a man she'd trusted since her first year. You're one of them, she said, throat dry. We are all of them, he replied. And so are you, if you choose it. Another figure spoke, this one's voice layered, almost electronic. You've touched the sigil. Heard the whisper. Seen the eye. The veil is thinner for you. Kate's fists clenched. Where's Dr. Hart? A pause. Then Marlowe spoke again. He crossed the veil without a guide. What came back was not him. We preserved what remained. He gestured toward a stone archway behind the table. Kate followed the movement, drawn forward, unblinking. There, in a suspended field of light, floated something between life and death. It had Hart's face. But his eyes were milky white, his mouth stitched shut with silver thread. Around him spun the symbols, like orbiting thoughts that never stopped whispering. Kate fell to her knees. No. Marlowe stepped beside her, hand resting gently on her shoulder. This is what awaits those who peek. But we offer you a choice. Step fully into the circle, or walk away and forget everything. Your memory, your research, even your name. We can unmake you. The serpent mask tilted. What will you sacrifice, Kate Voss? She looked at Hart. Then at the table. The truth. The power. The danger. And then she saw it, in her mind's eye, what lay beyond the veil. A realm of pure thought, memory, and darkness where the 13 did not govern by rules, but by ancient truths older than gods. And she knew. This wasn't the end. It was the threshold. Kate stood in the circle. The obsidian table reflected 13 flickering candle flames, none of which seemed to cast shadows. The masked figures surrounded her in complete silence, no whispers now. This part wasn't ritual. It was judgment. A stone dais rose slowly beneath her feet, lifting her into the center like an offering. The temperature dropped. Her breath fogged as if the air itself had retreated. A voice spoke, not aloud but within her. The trial has begun. You have seen too much. To proceed, you must give. A figure approached from the edge of the circle. The raven. In its gloved hands, it carried a polished wooden box. Inside, Kate saw 3 objects. A sliver of black glass, humming with heat. A folded parchment covered in Hart's writing. And a bone needle threaded with silver. The raven's voice rasped like wind through dry reeds. You may choose one to keep. The rest will burn. But what you choose defines what you lose. Kate looked at the items. Each pulsed faintly, as if alive. The room began to tilt, spin. No, her mind was spinning. The veil, she realized, wasn't just between worlds. It was inside her, too. She reached out. The parchment. Hart's words. His thoughts. His last trace. The raven nodded slowly. The box closed. The needle and the obsidian glass caught fire without flame, vanishing into smoke. Marlowe stepped forward again, mask still in place. What you saved is memory. But memory is fragile. Let us test yours. The room darkened. Suddenly, she was standing in her own apartment, but it was wrong, too still. The photos on the walls were blank. Her reflection was a second too slow in the mirror. A voice called out from her bedroom. Her own voice. She opened the door. Inside sat a version of herself, bound to a chair, eyes stitched shut. The figure in the chair whispered, mouth unmoving. You cannot serve 2 truths. Choose. A dagger appeared in her hand. She didn't remember picking it up. She screamed at them. What the hell is this? The 13 answered, voices in unison. This is the weight of knowledge. The cost of remembrance. Kill the past, or be drowned in it. Kate stared at herself. This trial wasn't about strength. It was about sacrifice. She raised the dagger. Her hand shook. She didn't want to do this. But deep inside, she felt it. The pull of the veil, and the cold certainty that this was the only way through. Her double smiled. Not with cruelty, but relief. The blade fell. When Kate woke, she was back in the chamber. The 13 still circled her. Her body trembled. Blood on her hands, real or not, she couldn't tell. Marlowe stepped forward. For the first time, he removed his mask. His eyes glowed faintly. Not with light. With memory. You passed, he said. But the path forward is no longer yours alone. He handed her a scroll, sealed with the symbol of the 13th sigil. What's this? She asked. The map to what Hart was truly seeking, he replied. Not the sigil. Not the society. The source. Kate looked down at the scroll, its seal pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. And then she heard it again. The whispers. But now they weren't just around her. They were waiting for her voice. Kate stood at the edge of the world. Not metaphorically. Not anymore. She had followed the scroll's directions, across cracked library tiles, under catacomb stones, through underground cities abandoned by time itself. Marcus had joined her for the first part, silent and pale, his mind increasingly slipping. He could no longer hold on to the lines between yesterday and now. By the 3rd night, he'd whispered to her. They live inside memory. And memory is breaking. On the 4th night, he was gone. No blood. No note. only his voice echoing faintly through her dreams. Turn back, Kate. Don't become a story they rewrite. But she didn't turn back. Because now, she knew what lay beneath the 13, beneath the whispers and trials and hidden rooms. There was a door, one that even they feared. She found it carved into a rock face beneath the catacombs, smooth, circular, etched with 1,000 symbols she couldn't name, yet understood perfectly. They bled together into one central shape. The complete 13th sigil. The veil. But it wasn't just a symbol. It was alive. It shimmered and vibrated as if responding to her heartbeat. The scroll crumbled in her hand, disintegrating the moment she stepped forward. Her fingers brushed the surface. And the world split. No light. No dark. No sound. Only thought. Only awareness. She saw everything. Heart suspended in time, staring into infinity. She saw herself, every version that could have been, each making different choices. Burning the journal, fleeing the university, taking the raven's needle. She saw Marcus, adrift in a sea of forgetting. She saw the 13, seated in a circle not of stone, but of eternity, gods, memories, ideas, ghosts of empires that had never existed. And then she saw them, the ones behind the veil. Not monsters. Not angels. Witnesses. They did not speak, because they did not need to. Their gaze alone told her what the 13 feared most. The veil wasn't protection. It was containment. The truth, raw, unfiltered, unshaped, was madness. It had no narrative, no history, no laws of physics or time. It was. It simply existed, and to know it fully was to be unraveled by it. The 13 didn't control the world. They prevented it from remembering itself. Kate came back gasping, knees on ancient stone. The veil still shimmered faintly behind her, but now open. Just a crack. Enough. She had seen too much. More than Hart. More than Marcus. More than anyone since the first whisper. She was not the same anymore. She couldn't be. Weeks passed. Dr. Austin Hart's body was found in a sealed room deep beneath the archives. His mind was gone, but his face wore a kind of peace. Marcus was never seen again. Kate returned to the university, but not to study. She gave lectures now, masked as fiction, riddled with false citations and invented names. But buried within them, she planted real truths, coded fragments of the veil. Clues for the curious. Not to tear the world open, but to prepare it. Because now she understands. The veil does not keep something out. It keeps something in. And it is watching her. Waiting. Just like she's watching it. The veil remains. For now. But not forever.